Welcome to Front Office Pros. As of right now, we are on the cusp of the NFL Tampering Period, and you Dynasty owners may be wondering if your player signs somewhere else, will his fantasy value increase or decrease? But with me is Dustin, and then a first-time guest on Front Office Pros, which is none other than Alex PeakedInHighSkool. Alex is well known in the fantasy football community with his monthly trade value charts, and he recently has joined the team at Draft Sharks. Alex, congrats, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hop on here. Dustin, he's like, man, you gotta join these guys and hang out with them. So I'm excited to spend some time with you guys today.
Well, we are just as excited. So for this roundtable discussion, we're going to be using Alex's March version of the Superflex Dynasty trade value chart as a baseline for player valuations. We're going to give you our opinion on whether their value will increase or decrease depending on what happens in free agency. If you want to see his full chart, you can find it on his website, and there will be a link below in the description. Now we're going to be talking about NFL free agency preview for Dynasty wide receivers and tight ends, and how these free agent, wide receiver, and tight end values could fluctuate depending on what happens in free agency. Before we get started, we're asking you to write in the comments, which wide receiver or tight end do you think will increase their value the most?
Hike!
So the first wide receiver we'll be discussing is wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster from the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. Smith-Schuster is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent and will be entering into his seventh season in the NFL and is 26 years old. On Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart, Juju Smith-Schuster has a value of 26 points, which is ahead of Tyler Lockett, Gabe Davis, and Elijah Moore, but behind Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Courtland Sutton. Alex, based on what happens to Juju Smith-Schuster in free agency, do you envision his value to increase or decrease?
I think the only way that it doesn't decrease is if he re-signs with the Chiefs. If he stays there in a pretty good spot where he was fine. I know he struggled with was it a concussion midway through the season, I think, and then took a little bit to come back. I just don't anticipate anywhere he goes, he's going to have just more. Like, I think a lot of us are holding on to his 2018, 2019 seasons where his rookie year was insane. His sophomore year was great. And maybe he just isn't that anymore. Maybe he never really was. Maybe he is who we're going to talk about next, Jakobi Meyers, but just a little bit bigger. So I'm just not overly interested in him. I don't think he's going to increase. I think he's probably a depth piece for most Dynasty teams. I don't think there's going to be a lot of he's probably not going to be overly interesting in free agency even to most teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see his value going up. I think it goes down. He was the de facto number one wide receiver on Kansas City. Obviously, he was behind Travis Kelce in targets, but still had 101 targets, which is pretty good for a wide receiver. I don't see a team out there that needs a one where he can sign and be the clear one, kind of like what Christian Kirk did last year. Like, he came on to Jacksonville last offseason and was the one. There's not a team like that this year. So wherever he goes, he's probably going to be the two, if not the three. Probably sees less targets. Even in Kansas City, I think they add another piece and he'll see less targets. So I think his value drops. Probably, I don't know if he drops a full tier, but probably into that next tier, my guess, right above, right where Darnell Mooney and Kadarius Toney are. So it drops a few points here and there, but he had 101 targets, so you can hope that the volume increases or stays the same, but I don't think it will.
Yeah, to me, I feel like those 100 targets are very misleading because if you look at his season last year, he was 42nd in total snaps, which at 737 snaps. He was 31st in targets at 101 targets. He was 33rd in routes run. And then he was only 50th in target share percentage at 17.3%, which I think that is, they obviously the Chiefs pass way more than other teams, so you have to consider that. But that was lower than Donovan Peoples-Jones, Gabe Davis, and Zay Jones. So to me, the targets, even though like you see 101 and you're like, oh, that's pretty good, like it's when you actually look at it, it really isn't. And so the question is, what happens with him? He signed a prove-it deal with the Chiefs. After signing a prove-it deal with the Steelers, that kind of like a home team discount. So it's kind of, I think he will want a multi-year deal. He's not just going to want to continue to sign one-year deals over and over and over again. I think the hope is him coming to the Chiefs, he was going to have great numbers so that he could test the market and get paid. So I'm going to be with you guys. I don't see him increasing. I don't see him going above the likes of Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Cortland Sutton. If anything, I think I see him dropping.
Just not a good landing spot for him, unless he went to like maybe Arizona if they trade Hopkins and he could go there and be the one. And they got Hollywood Brown, but like he's probably slightly just as good as Hollywood Brown, and they could trade Hollywood Brown again. So who knows? I just don't see a ton of great landing spots for him.
What if he goes to New England? They lose Jakobi. You interested there?
Yeah, I would be interested. The problem is like it's a low volume passing offense. It always has been. Hopefully, Bill O'Brien can turn that around with Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi, whoever he wants to start. It would be interesting because he would be the clear one there, but it's like that one there is like two everywhere else. So just because there's not a ton of volume there.
Yeah, I think to your point, Alex, I think that's an interesting spot for him. I think at the end of the day, it's a wait and see approach when it comes to Juju, and depending on landing spot, very dependent on landing spot. If a team would be willing to give him the feature role, which I kind of feel like most teams won't, then his value will decrease. I mean, and plus, even if he stays on the Chiefs, right? I would think you're going to see Tony and possibly Sky Moore taking a step forward. So even if he does there, I think, and they still have Kelsey, so he could still regress even if he stays with the Chiefs.
Yeah, he's one of the players that I probably disagree with the most on the chart. I would put him already down right next to Jakobi Meyers, like, to be honest. Like, I think he's overvalued
I agree
right now. Yeah.
So speaking of Jakobi Meyers, he's the next guy we're going to be talking about, the receiver from the New England Patriots. Myers is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent and will be entering into his 5th season in the NFL and is 26 years old. On Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart, Jakobi Meyers has a value of 23 points, which is ahead of Rondale Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Sky Moore, but behind Elijah Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Darnell Mooney. Dustin, based on what happens to Jakobi Meyers in free agency, do you envision his value to increase or decrease?
I honestly think it increases. I think he's the best wide receiver on the market right now. And what the skill set he provides is that sure-handed possession receiver, which teams want. So he could go anywhere and have a defined role, unlike Juju Smith-Schuster. So Jakobi Meyers could sign with the Bills and clearly be there too and push Gabe Davis down to 3 where Gabe Davis probably should be. Allows him to do more on the offense, but he'll get targets. He catches a high percentage of his balls, and I think that's where teams want him. So, like, I see him going anywhere, and I see him having a role and having value there. I think it jumps up a little bit. I think he goes into that tier where Juju is. Like, if Juju and Jakobi Meyers were flipped on this chart, I'd be like, that's where they should be. I think Jakobi Meyers belongs there with that Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, where they're like 2 on their team, but could be 1 if things shake out right. Like they might get more targets, but not as much touchdowns, or more touchdowns and less targets. He's obviously not going to be a superstar. He's never going to put up 1,000 yards because I don't think he's ever done that in his career. Last year he had 6 touchdowns. The year before that he had 2. I think he gets in that 5-6 touchdown range and probably has 700 yards on. He'll probably get 80 some targets and probably catch 60, 70 of them, and I think he'll be all right. So I think his value definitely goes up because I think he's going to have a defined role on an offense wherever he signs.
I'm fascinated to see. A lot of the time, I'm always curious to follow the money. What's happening? Like, who's going to get more? Is it Juju or Jakobi, and which team? And I think that's like, I'm excited just to see which one of these happens. And what kind of contract each of them get. Is Juju getting another 1 year and then Jakobi getting like a 3-year somewhere? And then I agree, absolutely swap them. I'm not super excited about him. I don't think he ever has the potential to jump into the, let's see, what tier, like up into what's the yellow? 3. I don't think there's any way he can ever get up into tier 3. And most of the time I'm aiming for players that have a lot of upside, that have a shot, right? Like if you're looking at maybe Kadarius Toney goes nuts. He flies up the board, that type of player. And Jakobi and Juju are just not the types of players that I'm particularly interested in. I think the story's kind of been written about what they're going to be in the NFL, and that's very important pieces for an NFL team and not necessarily super important for most of your fantasy leagues unless you're in a start a bunch or really deep 14, 16 teamer, that type of format. Maybe best ball is a little more interesting, but I think Jakobi's probably going to stay pretty static. I don't know of any really crazy landing spot that I could see him flying up the board or really dropping a ton unless he doesn't get a good contract somewhere.
Yeah, I think there are two positive aspects that you can look at with Jakobi Meyers and then two negative ones. So the positive is last year he was 36 in targets with 96 targets, and he was 31st in target share percentage at 21.9%. But that was on that New England Patriots offense that didn't really – that offense honestly wasn't humming really at any point during the year. So the negative is, in which it shows, right, he was 54th in routes run, which doesn't say he doesn't have a lot of opportunity, and 56 in total snaps. So the question will be, would his snap count and routes run increase if he went on more of a pass-heavy offense? I don't think he's a flashy enough a player to have his stock increase. So to me, I think at the end of the day, it will probably stay the same or possibly decrease. If anything, it's going to be slightly one way or the other. The only question I have in my mind, and I want to ask Alex about this because this is a fascinating player, is you had a guy like Christian Kirk who was never really featured in that Arizona offense, becomes a free agent, gets a ton of money and goes to Jacksonville, but he follows it up by having a super productive season. They're talking about Jakobi Meyers possibly getting that type of number out on the open market this season. I kind of doubt that, but let's say it happens. You kind of have an idea of how high Kirk rose in the trade chart. Do you think that's realistic? I mean, or do you think that's just an anomaly of what happened with Christian Kirk?
I think Christian Kirk is going to be a comparison that he's going to get a lot. That Jakobi, like that contract, and let's pretend he does get that. I think the recency bias of Christian Kirk, that literally happening to him, will propel Meyers up just because people will use that logic to move him higher in their ranks. Do we necessarily agree that that's going to happen? I don't know. That's tough to say. It was interesting. The market, I've stared at these a long time. The market was really slow to accept the Christian Kirk. I mean, for a while. Like, I mean, he signed a contract and he went up, but he didn't go up as much as you would think or as high as he is now. It took a while for him to go up on these charts. I think we would maybe see it happen quicker with Jakobi just because of that recency bias, but maybe it'd be an overreaction. Maybe it'd be, remembering the most recent thing that happened. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, offhand, out of curiosity, if you would know this, how many tiers or how many points did Kirk end up? So taking from the time he signed with Jacksonville to the end of the season, how much did he rise?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was in the tier, this like peach to red peach color. So I usually have a legend. I guess I didn't include it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he was definitely in like tier 4 or 5 zone for a long time. And then now he's he's definitely in the gold for sure. I don't see him, but I'm sure he is. Yeah,
he is
up there
yes.
At 35. I just from memory, I think he was closer to like the 23 value, maybe a little bit higher after signing the contract. But he was not left for dead on Dynasty charts, but he was pretty low.
Wow. So that's got to be one of the biggest rises that you've really seen since doing these charts.
Yeah, for sure. There's been some other pretty interesting ones. Cooper Kupp obviously has swung a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Debo has moved a ton because after his pretty solid, was it rookie year, he was good, and then was hurt all his sophomore year, and then junior year, I think, came back. He was like there's the wide receivers have been interesting. So usually the running backs seem to be a little more static a lot of the time. It's kind of counterintuitive, but I think sometimes some guys just get hurt and you can just write them off.
What I like about Alex's charts is the way you lay it out is you can see every position and draft pick. So when we're saying, right, Jakobi Meyers is worth 23 points, we think he's going to jump up to the next tier to 26. It's only 3 points, but that brings him up a tier and goes from basically a late second round to a mid-second round pick. So that's what I love about your charts, Alex, is that I can look and go, okay, Jakobi Meyers right now is equal to Kareem Hunt or he's equal to basically Darren Waller, or he's equal to a late second this year or a second next year. And if he jumps up, okay, he's worth a mid-second. So if I think he's going to fall, do I want to give an early, do I want to give still a late second, or do I want to give an early third, depending on where I think he goes? So being able to see cross positions and including those draft picks is super helpful with your charts, because when they do talk about jumping, when you're talking about him jumping to that gold tier, Christian Kirk up there at 35, you're talking about a 10-point jump or 10 to 15-point jump, but that puts him all the way into a late first category. So you could talk someone, Jakobi Meyers, going from a late second to a late first. That's a huge difference in draft capital that you're giving up for Dynasty. So I like that aspect of your charts, that it's real easy to play up, to go along with position compared to some of these other charts where it's, you have to search for people. You can see everyone at one time and it's real easy to read.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you accomplished the goal. And, I don't know if you do this. So maybe this is something to consider. I don't know. But to me, I just thinking about it, it would be fascinating to almost see a line chart from through the weeks of here was Kirk and it was like this, and then it was like this, and, just over those that time to kind of see because the perception of players, it's very volatile. It can change, on a before we know it. So it's very interesting. So transitioning over the tight ends now. The first tight end we'll be talking about is tight end Dalton Schultz from the Dallas Cowboys. Schultz is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent and will be entering into his 5th season in the NFL, and is 26 years old. On Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart, Dalton Schultz has a value of 24 points, which is ahead of Cole Kmet, Darren Waller, and Trey McBride, but behind David Njoku, Greg Dulcich, and Evan Ingram. Alex, based on what happens to Dalton Schultz in free agency, do you envision his value to increase or decrease?
So I think Schultz is the most interesting, or one of the best comps would be Austin Hooper when he left the Falcons and went to the Browns. His market perception went way up and his output went way, way down. I think Schultz is a product of his offense. I think there's no offense that's going to feature him in the same way. I think there's very few opportunities that are going to feature him in the same way. I expect that his market will go up, and I expect I will just be going way more out on him. I am not excited about him. I think he is probably overvalued in the chart. Is there any way he stays in Dallas? I mean, he wants to get paid justifiably. Everyone should, and they just can't do it, right? They just don't have it. So I expect he's going to go somewhere. Everyone's going to get excited about it. They're going to remember that he finished what was he, tight end 4 last year or something? I mean, something insane, because the tight end position is really sad and depressing. And they're going to chase after that hope, and it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, I agree. He was tight end 3 in 2 years ago, and then tight end 11 this past year. I agree that I don't see his value increasing a ton. I don't see it there's the Lions is my landing spot for tight ends. I really want to see who goes there, because they do utilize that tight end position. But also we have a lot of young guys below him on the chart. Chiga Okonkwo is below him, Cole Kmet, Trey McBride, even guys like Gesicki, likely Jelani Woods, who could jump up. I know a lot of people are talking about Schultz going to the Chargers to, get back with Kellen Moore. I just don't see an avenue for him to increase his production. I agree with you. He saw 89 targets last year, 104 the year before, then 89 the year before that. But his first 2 seasons, he had 2 and 12, so he didn't play a ton. So 5 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns the past 3 years. Can he do it? The tight end landscape's such a wasteland at some point that, yes, he can, but I don't see it. And I think there's going to be some of these younger guys, values are going to increase. And I think that on some level pushes Schultz down, because people just aren't going to be buying into him this year.
Yeah, Schultz was definitely a late bloomer, and that can happen with the tight end position. But I'm with you, Alex, 100%. I think he's a product of his environment. And he has done really well in Dallas, and I don't really want him if he's not in Dallas. I think him and Dak Prescott have a really great chemistry together. And when you look at the stats, he was 8th in targets, 9th in target share for tight ends at 18.7%, and was 11th in total snaps and 13th in routes run. So overall, his profile, he's getting a lot of opportunities. So if he goes somewhere else, will he get those same opportunities? I think you made a great comparison with Hooper, because when Hooper had that incredible year in Atlanta, and he never was able to do that in Cleveland. So to me, I think that production drop that you saw, I think could definitely happen. So to me, I would be shocked if he goes up. I think if he does, it's that unknown factor where it's like, oh, he's going to a new landing spot, and people get excited because it's changed and we don't know what's going to happen. But I think ultimately his value will drop, and if it does go up, I'm not buying it. So I'm very bearish when it comes to Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I think Hooper's even a free agent. We should have talked about him. What were we doing, guys?
Well, I think he's irrelevant now. But as far as we are on a speed round right now. So, Alex, if you feel he's the biggest riser, I'd like to hear your point on it. But we're going to list a few wide receivers and tight ends that are around a similar value on Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart. So, quickly give me a wide receiver or tight end that you believe has the best potential for increased value depending on what happens in free agency. So, we've got wide receiver DJ Chark at 15 points. Wide receiver Alan Lazard at 14 points. Wide receiver Michael Thomas at 13 points. Wide receiver Odell Beckham at 8 points. A recent addition, Adam Thielen, was released by the Minnesota Vikings. He's at 11 points. Mike Gesicki, tight end, is at 16 points. And then let's put a shot. If Austin Hooper, what is he, like 5 points? Where is Austin Hooper on that chart?
He's not on the chart.
There you go. He's not even on the chart. So, Dustin, let's start with you. Out of those guys, Hooper included, who do you think has the best chance to increase their value?
There's only one guy on this list that has potential to get into a tier 1, tier 2 tier for me, and that's Odell Beckham, obviously. Ooh. His value's low because obviously he didn't play last year. The minute Odell Beckham signs with the team, his value is going to skyrocket. He will jump from wherever he's at in tier, who knows, like you're talking, he's in tier purple, whatever that is, 6, 7. I think he immediately goes to tier 2. I think he's in that conversation with DeAndre Hopkins at 31 points, with Amari Cooper at 33 points. Like, he's in that conversation with potential to jump to the top of that group, if not higher, with the Chris Olaves, DK Metcalfs in tier 2 at 57, 58 points. We've seen it with guys like Josh Gordon, right? Fantasy players love that potential. Fantasy players will buy into the potential of Odell Beckham. We saw it a year and a half ago. Didn't play this last season, but even when he was talking about coming back, people were snatching him up off waivers. So the minute he signs or even talks about, even if he just talks about, if he meets with the team, I think he's having workouts this week or next week for teams. I think his value is going to start to creep up. And then as soon as he signs, it's going to jump a ton. Is he a wide receiver 1 for a team? No. Is he a wide receiver 2 for a team? Possibly on the right situation. I think he's more of a 3, but we saw what he could be as a 3 for the Rams. We saw that he was still really productive. He's come back from the injury. It looks like he's running healthy. So I think his value could jump a significant amount right now.
Real quick, before we get to Alex, I'm a little surprised, Dustin, because you're like the organizer for the Mike Gesicki fan club. Why didn't you say Mike Gesicki?
I love Mike Gesicki, and I think his value will jump a bunch. It's just not as much as Odell Beckham. I think Gesicki has the potential to be the best tight end out of this free agency group in general, and I think he could jump into that top 5 tight end if he goes to the right spot. If he goes to Detroit, I love it. Even if Gesicki stays in Miami, which he's probably not going to, everyone said they didn't use him. He still ran the same amount of routes. He blocked a little more, but he got half the targets he got last year, but still had more touchdowns. So, like, they were working him in. Obviously, you bring in Tyreek Hill, it's going to take targets from someone, and those got taken away from Mike Gesicki. But he could go somewhere and be a high-caliber tight end, but Odell Beckham can be a top 15 wide receiver, where a top 15 wide receiver and the top 5 tight end are very different in fantasy because of the wasteland and because of the position scarcity. Unless you're in a tight end premium, I just think Beckham jumps way higher, but I do think Gesicki jumps a ton, and I'm a big fan of him.
I think Dustin has a lot of shares of Odell Beckham, and he's trying to pump and dump. He's like, guys, send me trades. He's the best. He's going to be a top 15. That's bold. It's interesting. I do think he has probably the most potential to jump because he is at 8, not because he should be up there with Hopkins. But I think a guy that has a higher likelihood of being interesting is DJ Chark. I might be one of his biggest fans. I think at the right team, he has some potential. If he goes to Dallas or something, somewhere where it gets interesting some guy who's quick. He can add some speed to the team, and he can be not the focal point, but a focus, like where he has opportunity. I haven't given up on him yet. Yes, I do have him on too many dynasty teams. Send me trades.
You should give up on him.
So going on a quick rundown here. So Alan Lazard, I'm out on him. I'm not a fan of his. I think his best shot is being in chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. I think once he goes to another team, I think he's going to be an afterthought. If he comes back to Green Bay, who knows if Aaron Rodgers will come back. So to me, I don't like Alan Lazard. We include Michael Thomas on the list because reports are indicating that he may get released. And I might be one of the most I do not like Michael Thomas at all. I think he's done. You can't rely on him. It's his foot or his ankle. At the end of the day, now if he goes to Denver and reunites with Sean Payton, I think it could really increase his value. But to me, I have to believe it. I have to see it to believe it, and I'm out on him. I'm with you. Odell's interesting. I think he'll be a riser, and so will Gesicki. Thielen, I think, is too old. So that leads me to I'm with you 100% of the way, Alex. I'm on that DJ Chark train with you. You and I may be one of the highest people on DJ Chark. Let's talk about why Dustin's wrong, okay? DJ Chark is 26 years old. His best season, he was a wide receiver too, and he was 17th in PPR that season in 2019. But guess who his quarterback was? Gardner Minshew. So he signs a one-year prove-it deal, goes to Detroit. He doesn't have that great of a season. He was injured. Jared Goff was his quarterback. If he's in the right situation, I'm curious to see what he does, because obviously the market did not go in his favor. He recently, I don't remember what his injury was, but he did get injured. And then he signed that deal with Detroit afterwards. So does he go back with Detroit? I don't think so. I think the hope was he could then get a bigger contract. Knowing what just happened with Christian Kirk, who knows the possibilities? But I'm with Alex all the way here. I think DJ Chark's potential. He was a wide receiver too with that Gardner Minshew offense, which I want to say was Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator. What a disaster. So wherever he goes, if he goes to an ideal spot, I think he's going to climb. So I'm with you. I would hold off on trading him, Alex. I think you're going to get pennies on a dollar from a guy like Dustin. You keep him and watch that stock rise.
I was just saying, he fractured his ankle in 2021. That was the end of his season with Minshew. And then he sprained his ankle again last year, and that knocked him out for a while. But then he came on strong to end the season too. I think I saw he had like almost all of his yards and all of his, like when he was getting more into that offense and was finally getting healthy. And now Dustin can rain on our parade.
The dude had 3 touchdowns last year, 2 the year before, 5 the year before that, and then his great season in 2019 with Jacksonville for 8. He's only been over 1,000 yards once, and that was in 2019. So, 502 yards, 52 targets. I mean, yes, he only played 11 games, but let's face it, he played 11 games last year, 4 the year before, 13 the year before that, 15 in his great year. So he has yet to play a full season. He hasn't done squat. He just isn't. He's 6'4", but doesn't play like a 6'4" receiver. I just don't see why people love DJ Chark. He hasn't shown it to me. Even his that stretch at the end of the season, right? 6 targets for 5 catches, 98 yards. Okay, good. 7 targets, 6 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. 5 catches for 4 yards 2 weeks later for 108, but he had 2 for 1 for 18 in week 15. So he does really well, but then he just falls off. There just doesn't make consistency for me to be excited about him. I just don't get it. I think I'm out. I've been out on DJ Chark for 2 years now. I think everybody's wanting for Allen Robinson, DJ Chark to recreate what they did in Jacksonville, and it's never happened.
Says the guy that's really high on Odell Beckham Jr.
Because we saw
not
it.
2016 anymore.
That one-handed catch is gone, Dustin. That's a long memory, way back ago.
Listen, 2021 Beckham was good. 2019 DJ Chark was good. So Beckham was good more recent than Chark.
Okay, I'm gonna put your money where your mouth is. Before we end here, who will have a better season in 2023, Chark or Beckham?
Beckham, easily.
Alex?
Definitely Chark.
Definitely Chark. Let's go. We're gonna see who wins that. It's gonna be Dustin's in the Beckham camp. Me and Alex are in the Chark camp. So we may eat crow, around this time before the end of the season. But we're gonna go with it, aren't we, Alex? So that does it for our NFL free agency preview for wide receivers and tight ends. We just went over the most prominent free agent receivers and tight ends available and how their fantasy value could change depending on what happens to them in free agency. If you enjoyed this content, we ask you to please like this video, comment below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also recently have joined Apple and Spotify podcasts, so follow us there as well. Before we go, Alex, where can others find your great work?
Yeah, you can find my trade charts over on PeakedInHighSkool.com, and that is school with a K. You can also find a lot of my newer work over on Draft Sharks. I have a new rookie prospect model that I just published that's pretty fun. It looks at a mix of analytics, film breakdown, production scores, athleticism, really all of it combined into one. It's a little bit of a different approach that I think it's cool. So you should definitely check that out.
Yeah, definitely encourage all of you who are watching to check that out. Again, I just want to give another thanks to Alex for coming on as a first-time guest. If you hadn't watched, we went through quarterbacks, we went through running backs, and now you're watching receivers and tight ends. It's great content. Make sure you follow Dustin and Alex. And hey, if you want, you can also follow me at Front Office Pros on Twitter. Would greatly appreciate it. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time.